The man everyone treated like a forgotten guest was the only person in that room who knew exactly how this story would end. The first time I noticed something was wrong, it wasn't because anyone raised their voice. It wasn't because of an argument, a shocking confession, or a dramatic scene. It was because of the silence. House Harrison had always been a place where silence carried meaning. The massive old money dining room stretched beneath crystal chandeliers that had hung there longer than most of the people seated beneath them had been alive. The oak table seemed endless, polished so perfectly that the reflections of wine glasses shimmered across its surface. Family portraits watched from the walls. The fireplace glowed softly against dark wood paneling. Everything looked elegant. Everything looked normal. But nothing felt normal that night. Harrison sat alone at the far end of the table, wearing his worn denim jacket as if he had wandered into the wrong house by mistake. Nobody asked for his opinion. Nobody offered him a place in the conversation. Isabel poured wine beside David with the confidence of someone who believed she controlled the room. David looked exhausted, his dark suit hanging heavily on his shoulders as if carrying burdens no one else could see. Eleanor sat beneath the chandelier, quietly moving food around her plate without eating. She avoided eye contact with everyone. Ethan noticed that. He noticed everything. At 24, he had inherited something far more dangerous than money. He had inherited curiosity. From his seat near the staircase, he watched the family perform their usual roles. Victoria guided conversations with subtle remarks that sounded harmless, but somehow always pushed people where she wanted them to go. James, the longtime family butler, moved quietly through the room. Thomas, the family lawyer, arrived late and took his seat without explanation. Then something happened that nobody else seemed to notice. Thomas looked directly toward Harrison. Not for a second. Not by accident. He studied him carefully. Then he gave a small nod. Harrison returned it. The exchange lasted less than a heartbeat. Ethan almost convinced. Himself he imagined it. Almost. Because moments later, James approached Harrison carrying a sealed cream-colored envelope. He placed it beside him with unusual care. Harrison didn't open it. He simply rested his hand on top of it. Across the room, Victoria froze. Only for a moment, but Ethan saw it. And when he looked back toward Harrison, he realized something that sent a chill through him. For the first time all evening, Harrison was smiling. The rest of the dinner unfolded as if nothing had happened, yet Ethan could not shake the feeling that he had just witnessed something important. The envelope remained beside Harrison untouched. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody asked about it. In a family where every detail was usually questioned, that silence felt deliberate. Ethan watched Victoria carefully. She had recovered her composure, but not completely. Every few minutes her eyes drifted toward the far end of the table. Not toward David. Not toward Isabel. Toward Harrison. That alone was strange enough. Harrison was supposed to be invisible. For as long as Ethan could remember, he had existed on the edges of family gatherings like a piece of furniture nobody noticed anymore. Yet tonight the most powerful woman in the room seemed unable to stop watching him. Isabel continued steering conversations toward business matters, discussing upcoming investments and property decisions. David answered when necessary but appeared distracted. Eleanor remained unusually quiet. At one point Ethan caught her staring at Harrison with an expression that looked dangerously close to regret. The sight unsettled him. Eleanor rarely revealed emotion. Across the room, James moved between guests collecting empty plates. As he passed Harrison, their eyes met briefly. Another silent exchange. Another moment nobody else appeared to notice. Ethan leaned back in his chair and tried to make sense of it all. The pieces refused to fit together. If Harrison truly meant nothing to this family, why did Thomas acknowledge him with such respect? Why did James seem loyal to him? And why did Victoria react to a simple envelope as though it carried consequences? The questions followed him long after. Dinner ended. Later that evening, the house settled into its usual nighttime quiet. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows overlooking the grounds. Ethan found himself unable to sleep. Around midnight, he stepped into the upstairs hallway and glanced down toward the grand foyer below. That was when he saw movement near the library entrance. James, the old butler, moved carefully through the shadows carrying a small brass key. Ethan watched as he unlocked the library door and disappeared inside. Seconds later, another figure approached. Harrison. He entered without hesitation, as though he belonged there more than anyone else in the house. Ethan stood frozen at the railing. Nobody used the library after midnight. Nobody except those two. A few moments later, the door closed behind them. Through the stained glass panel, Ethan could see only faint silhouettes moving inside the room. Then a single sentence drifted into the hallway before the door fully sealed shut. It was James speaking in a low voice. "It is almost time, sir." Ethan felt his heartbeat quicken, not because of what had been said, because of the last word. "Sir." Ethan barely slept for the rest of the night. The word echoed in his mind long after the hallway had gone silent. "Sir." James had not called Thomas sir. He had not called David sir. He had called Harrison sir. By breakfast the next morning, House Harrison seemed determined to pretend that nothing unusual had happened. Sunlight streamed through the tall dining room windows, casting pale gold reflections across the oak table. Isabel was already discussing schedules for an upcoming charity event. Victoria sat perfectly composed, sipping coffee as though she had never shown the slightest concern the night before. David looked tired again. Eleanor remained distant. Harrison arrived last. He carried himself with the same quiet indifference as always and took his usual seat at the far end of the table. Ethan studied him carefully. The older man wore the same faded work jacket and carried none of the confidence one would expect from someone who inspired such loyalty from James. Yet Ethan could not ignore what he had seen. Halfway through breakfast, another surprise arrived. A young woman stepped into the dining room accompanied by Thomas. She looked to be in her early 30s, professionally dressed and carrying a leather portfolio. The room changed the moment she entered. Isabel stopped speaking. Victoria set down her coffee cup a little too quickly. Even David straightened in his chair. Thomas cleared his throat. "Everyone, this is Sophia Bennett." The name meant nothing to Ethan, but the reactions around him said otherwise. Sophia greeted the family politely before taking a seat. Then her eyes moved around the table. She acknowledged Isabel, nodded to David, smiled briefly at Eleanor. But when she looked at Harrison, something unusual happened. She did not look surprised to see him. She looked relieved. The expression lasted only a second before disappearing behind professional composure. Ethan noticed it immediately. So did Harrison. Neither spoke. The conversation resumed, but an invisible tension settled over the room. Sophia mentioned reviewing historical trust documents connected to the family. Victoria responded with carefully chosen questions. Isabel seemed more interested than she wanted others to believe. Through it all, Sophia kept returning to the same topic. Records, archives, original ownership, details from decades ago. When breakfast finally ended, Ethan found himself standing beside the staircase as guests drifted away. Sophia passed by carrying her portfolio. For a moment she paused. "You are Ethan, right?" she asked. He nodded. She glanced toward the library door before lowering her voice. "Tell me something. How much do you actually know about Harrison?" Before Ethan could answer, she walked away. And for the first time, he realized the mystery might be much bigger than one man. The question stayed with Ethan for the rest of the day. How much did he actually know about Harrison? The honest answer was almost nothing. He knew the older man had been living on the estate for years. He knew nobody ever explained why. He knew family gatherings treated Harrison as an afterthought, someone tolerated rather than welcomed. Until now, Ethan had accepted that version of reality without questioning it. But once doubt entered his mind, old memories began resurfacing. Small moments, strange moments, moments that suddenly seemed important. Late that afternoon, rain clouds gathered over the estate again. Ethan wandered through the West Wing searching for answers he could not yet define. House Harrison was enormous, filled with rooms most family members rarely entered. Near the back corridor, he discovered a portrait gallery he had not visited since childhood. Oil paintings lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Generations of family history stared down from heavy, gilded frames. Ethan moved slowly past them until one portrait stopped him cold. The painting showed a younger man standing beside the original founder of the estate nearly 30 years earlier. The resemblance was unmistakable. The eyes, the posture, even the unruly silver hair beginning to appear. It was Harrison. Ethan stepped closer. A brass nameplate beneath the painting looked newer than the frame itself, almost as if it had been replaced. Before he could examine it further, a voice behind him made him turn. "You should not spend too much time in this hallway." Eleanor stood at the entrance holding a cardigan tightly around her shoulders. She looked tired, older than usual. Ethan pointed toward the portrait. Why is Harrison in this painting? Eleanor stared at it for a long moment. Her expression softened into something that looked painfully familiar. Regret. Some questions have waited a very long time to be asked, she said quietly. And some people worked very hard to make sure they never were. Ethan took a step closer. Who is he really? Eleanor opened her mouth as if she intended to answer. Then she stopped. Her eyes shifted toward the end of the hallway. Victoria was standing there, silent, watching. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The air itself felt heavy. Finally, Eleanor lowered her gaze. "Be careful what you go looking for," she whispered. Then she walked away. Victoria remained where she was. Her expression never changed. Yet there was something unmistakable in her eyes. Concern. Real concern. For the first time in his life, Ethan realized Victoria was not worried about a secret being discovered. She was worried about a secret surviving long enough to be told. That evening, Ethan returned to the portrait gallery after most of the household had retired for the night. The estate felt different now. Not larger, stranger. Every hallway seemed to contain a question nobody wanted answered. The old grandfather clock near the main staircase marked 10 o'clock as he stood once again in front of the portrait. This time he examined the brass nameplate more carefully. The metal looked newer than everything around it. Even the screws were different. Someone had changed it. Someone had wanted the identity beneath that painting rewritten. The realization sent a chill through him. He pulled out his phone and photographed the frame from several angles before leaving the gallery. His next destination was the library. The same library where Harrison and James had met after midnight. The door was unlocked. Inside, rows of leather-bound volumes stretched toward the ceiling. A fire burned quietly in the stone hearth. The room smelled of old paper and cedar. Ethan moved through the shelves until he discovered a cabinet hidden behind a row of estate records. It was not locked. Inside sat dozens of folders organized by year. Most contained routine business documents, tax records, property assessments, trust reports. Then one folder caught his attention. It was older than the others. The label simply read Original Ownership. Ethan opened it carefully. The first pages contained incorporation papers connected to the family trust decades earlier. He scanned the signatures. One name appeared repeatedly. Harrison Cole. Ethan froze. He read the documents again. Then a third time. The signature was undeniable. Harrison was not listed as an employee. He was not listed as an advisor. He was listed as a founding trustee. Ethan's pulse quickened. Everything he had been told about the family suddenly felt unstable. According to the narrative everyone accepted, Victoria had built the family's influence after her marriage. Yet these records existed years before that. Harrison's name appeared throughout the earliest filings while Victoria's was nowhere to be found. Footsteps sounded outside the library. Ethan quickly returned the folder to its place and stepped away from the cabinet. The door opened. Sophia entered carrying her leather portfolio. She stopped when she saw him. Neither spoke for a moment. Then she glanced toward the hidden cabinet. "You found it, did you not?" she asked quietly. Ethan stared at her. Why does every important document lead back to Harrison? Sophia hesitated. For the first time since arriving at the estate, she seemed unsure of her next words. Finally, she answered, "Because without Harrison, none of this would exist." Sophia's words followed Ethan long after she left the library. Without Harrison, none of this would exist. The statement sounded impossible. Yet every document he had seen pointed in the same direction. For decades, the family had acted as though Harrison was little more than a tolerated outsider. The records told a completely different story. The following morning, the atmosphere inside the estate felt unusually tense. Staff members moved quietly through the hallways. Conversations stopped when certain people entered rooms. Even David seemed distracted, spending most of breakfast staring into his coffee. Ethan noticed that Harrison was absent. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody asked where he was. That silence bothered him more than any argument could have. After breakfast, he found Eleanor alone in the sunroom overlooking the eastern gardens. The gray morning light softened her features and made her look fragile in a way he had never noticed before. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Eleanor surprised him. "You found the old records, did not you?" Ethan looked at her carefully. "You already know I did." She nodded slowly. Secrets never stay buried forever. Ethan sat across from her. "Then tell me the truth." Eleanor stared out the window toward the distant greenhouse. "The truth is complicated. Was Harrison really one of the founders? He asked. Her eyes closed briefly. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Hearing it spoken aloud made everything more real. Then why has everyone spent years pretending otherwise? Eleanor remained silent. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly in the distance. Finally, she spoke again. Because people became comfortable with a different version of history. Who changed it? Eleanor did not answer directly. Instead, she asked a question of her own. Have you ever wondered why Victoria always insists on controlling every family decision? Ethan already knew the answer mattered. He simply waited. Some people protect power, Eleanor said quietly. Others protect the story that gives them power. The second group is far more dangerous. Before Ethan could respond, footsteps approached the sunroom. Victoria appeared in the doorway. Her expression was calm. Too calm. She glanced between them and smiled politely. I hope I am not interrupting. Eleanor immediately fell silent. The conversation was over. Ethan recognized it instantly. Victoria stepped into the room and rested a hand on the back of a chair. Thomas will be hosting a trust review meeting tomorrow evening, she said. Everyone is expected to attend. Then her eyes settled on Ethan. Including you. For reasons he could not explain, the invitation felt less like a request and more like a warning. The next 24 hours felt unusually long. Every member of the household seemed aware that something important was approaching, even if nobody spoke about it directly. By late afternoon, the estate had settled beneath a gray sky, and a steady rain tapped against the tall windows overlooking the grounds. Ethan spent most of the day trying to uncover more information, but every trail seemed to end just before reaching the truth. Records disappeared. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Doors that were normally open suddenly remained closed. The closer he came to understanding Harrison's role, the more resistance he encountered. Shortly before dinner, he found Thomas alone in the study reviewing documents. The family lawyer looked exhausted. His glasses rested low on his nose, and several thick folders were spread across the desk. Ethan hesitated before speaking. What happens at tomorrow's trust meeting? Thomas looked up slowly. For a moment, he appeared to consider answering honestly. Then he sighed. Some meetings exist to explain the future. Others exist because the past finally catches up. The response only deepened the mystery. Does it involve Harrison? Ethan asked. Thomas remained silent long enough to become an answer. Finally, he removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. There are people in this family who spent years believing certain facts would never surface. And were they wrong? Ethan asked. Thomas gave a tired smile. Very wrong. Later that evening, the family gathered once again inside the massive dining room. Crystal chandeliers reflected warm light across the polished oak table. Isabel appeared composed but unusually quiet. David seemed distracted. Eleanor barely touched her meal. Victoria maintained her usual confidence, though Ethan noticed her checking the grandfather clock several times throughout dinner. Harrison sat at the far end of the table exactly as he always did. Calm, patient, almost detached from the tension surrounding him. Then something unexpected happened. James entered carrying a sealed leather portfolio. He walked directly past Victoria, past David, past Isabel. Without hesitation, he placed it in front of Harrison. The room fell silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Harrison rested his hand on the portfolio, but did not open it. Across the table, Victoria's expression tightened for only a second before returning to normal. Ethan noticed. So did Eleanor. For the first time all evening, Harrison looked directly at Victoria. No anger, no challenge, just quiet certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from knowing something nobody else knows. And in that moment, Ethan realized tomorrow's meeting was not going to reveal a new future. It was going to reveal an old truth. The trust meeting began precisely at 7 o'clock the following evening. Rain swept across the estate grounds while every major member of the family gathered inside the formal conference room adjoining the library. The atmosphere felt heavier than any family dinner Ethan could remember. Thomas sat at the head of the long mahogany table, surrounded by thick folders and legal documents. Sophia occupied a seat beside him with her portfolio open. David appeared uneasy. Isabel maintained her polished composure, though Ethan noticed her fingers tapping lightly against the armrest of her chair. Eleanor sat quietly near the window, her expression unreadable. Victoria arrived last. She entered with the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling every room she entered. Harrison was already there. As always, he chose a seat slightly removed from the center of attention. Yet tonight, nobody seemed capable of ignoring him. Thomas began with routine formalities: trust structures, asset reviews, historical records. For nearly 20 minutes, the discussion remained technical and uneventful. Then Sophia slid a document across the table. The room grew noticeably still. Thomas adjusted his glasses and studied the page before speaking. There appears to be a discrepancy between the public trust summary and the original founding records. No one interrupted. Even Victoria remained silent. Thomas continued. Several amendments made over the years reference authority granted by the original founding trustee. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. He already suspected where this was heading. Across the table, Harrison remained perfectly calm. Sophia opened another folder. "The issue," she said carefully, "is that the identity of that founding trustee does not match the version preserved in later family records." David frowned. Isabel shifted in her chair. Eleanor lowered her eyes. Only Victoria remained motionless. Thomas removed a document from the folder and placed it on the table. "This is an authenticated copy of the original filing." Ethan leaned forward. The signature at the bottom was immediately recognizable. Harrison Cole. Nobody spoke. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes. David stared at the page as if reading a foreign language. Isabel looked toward Victoria. Eleanor quietly closed her eyes. Then Ethan noticed something unexpected. Victoria was not shocked. She was disappointed, as though the outcome had been inevitable all along. Finally, Thomas broke the silence. "There is more." He lifted another sealed envelope. The same cream-colored envelope James had delivered days earlier. Thomas rested his hand on it before looking directly toward Harrison. This document was to remain sealed until tonight. Every eye in the room shifted toward the envelope. Harrison said nothing. He simply nodded once, and Thomas began opening it. Thomas carefully unfolded the document and adjusted it beneath the conference room lights. Nobody moved. The sound of rain against the windows seemed louder than before. For years, the family had built their lives around assumptions that now appeared dangerously fragile. Thomas cleared his throat and began reading. The document was not a transfer of assets. It was not a revision of the trust. It was a statement written decades earlier by the original founder of the estate. As the words filled the room, Ethan felt the entire history of the family shifting beneath his feet. The founder described Harrison not as an employee, advisor, or distant relative. He described him as a partner, an equal, a man who had helped build everything from the beginning but had deliberately stepped out of public view to protect the family during a period of financial uncertainty many years earlier. Harrison had never been removed from authority. He had chosen silence. The room remained completely still. David looked stunned. Isabel stared at the table. Eleanor wiped away a tear she had clearly been holding back for years. Thomas continued reading. The final section explained that if the truth ever needed to be revealed, it would mean the family had forgotten the principles upon which the estate was built. Loyalty, humility, stewardship, character. Ethan slowly turned toward Harrison. The older man sat exactly as he always had. No triumph, no anger, no satisfaction, just quiet patience. Sophia closed her portfolio and leaned back. She looked less like an investigator now and more like someone who had finally completed a long journey. Then Victoria spoke. Her voice was calm but softer than Ethan had ever heard it. "I never wanted this to happen this way." Nobody responded. For the first time, she sounded tired. Not defeated, just tired. Harrison finally stood. Every eye followed him. He looked around the room at the people who had spent years misunderstanding him. "The truth was never hidden," he said quietly. "People simply stopped looking for it." His voice carried no bitterness, only certainty. He glanced toward David, then Ethan, then Eleanor. This family spent too much time protecting stories and not enough time protecting each other. The words settled heavily over the room. No one argued. No one challenged him, because everyone knew he was right. Harrison then turned toward the windows where rain continued to fall across the estate grounds. "The trust was never about money," he said. "It was about responsibility." After a long silence, he picked up the leather portfolio James had delivered days earlier and handed it to Ethan. The gesture surprised everyone, including Ethan. Harrison smiled faintly. "You were the first person who asked questions." Ethan accepted the portfolio with trembling hands. In that moment, he finally understood. The man everyone overlooked had not been waiting for power. He had been waiting for someone willing to see the truth.